Thank you all for coming. Tonight's speaker is Becky Curran. John will be presenting, John Norton. And John Hall will start with the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. It is good to recognize how different we all are. It is good to know that when you created us, you broke the mold. No one is exactly like anyone else. Yet we thank you that we can take these differences and mobilize them for the good of our community and the world. In our differences, we can think the same thoughts and move together towards a common goal. Bless us all as we are here to meet tonight, and thank you for our individuality and also for our common bond. Amen. All right, our guest speaker tonight is Becky Curran. We're going to have John Norton's going to come up and do the proper introductions. That will just pop up. Be careful of that stand when you walk away from it.
Well, thank you. You know, as a member of the Rotary, Hingham and Hull Rotary Club, you know, one thing I've learned is how much and how lucky we are for some of the charities, both locally and internationally, and the contributions that they make, and especially proud of the contributions our club has made. But in addition, you know, some of the people that work so hard behind the scenes, and getting to see so many things that many of the members of the club do and do quietly, it's so impressive. But there's one lady in particular that I have seen at a lot of the functions that I've attended on the South Shore that just quietly works behind the scenes, and a lot of the charities are near and dear to my heart, and whenever I go, she's always there. And her name is Linda Curran, and Linda Curran is a retired Weymouth teacher, although I heard she's going to be going back to fill in for someone for a while, but always raising money, whether it be auctions, getting items, and getting different packages together, and always there behind the scenes. And at one of the events I attended about 5 or 6 years ago, she told me about her daughter and how proud she was going out to California to try to live her dream. And that was going to be in the entertainment industry. And I think we can all imagine how difficult it is to break into that industry. And with quite a struggle, our guest tonight got involved with a entertainment and sports agency and worked there for about 5 years and really made her mark. And after that, I think she was involved with CBS, working the talent end. And then most recently, in September, she was named Stars 2013 40 under 40, which means 40 of the most influential people here on the South Shore for their many contributions. And when Chris sent out an SOS that we were not going to get the well-known speaker about the Concordia and raising the ship, I said, who are we going to get that really can fill the bill and really be informative and entertaining? And I thought of Becky, and I said, it's worth a shot. I gave her a call, and I was delighted I didn't have to twist her arm. And she said, sure, what time and where, and so here she is. So please join me with a warm hand and a welcome for Becky Curran, our speaker tonight.
Hi, my name is Becky Curran. I live in Los Angeles, California, and I'm an achondroplastic dwarf. And that means that I have a shorter arms and legs and an average height torso. When I was first born in 1984, my parents were told that I may not make it through the night, but I came out kind of like a character where my head was almost the size of my body, so they were really worried because they didn't know much about the situation. My dad's 6'4". He had no clue what to do. So about 6 months after I was born, they found a doctor in Baltimore, Maryland. This doctor gave them everything they needed to know, and he said she's going to be okay. I grew up active in sailing, soccer, swimming, and skiing. I wanted to make sure I did as much as everyone else, but it would take me a lot longer. I was never singled out in a different category. I've never been involved with the Special Olympics or even the Dwarf Athletic Association. I've just been competing among my average height peers. And I actually ended up in high school getting a Presidential Fitness Award because it wasn't for any of the other categories except for the sit and reach. Definitely one of the main reasons when I first came out here was because some of my closest friends I've met at Little People conventions. There are actually 200 different types of little people. 80% of little people are born to average height parents. A lot of people don't understand, especially with my type of dwarfism, that sitting down, I'm the same height as everyone else. My type of dwarfism is actually the healthiest type. And there are so many people that go through so many other struggles. One type is primordial, and they're expected to last only till about the age of 15. There's definitely times where it's been really, really hard on me. I went on 100 interviews over the course of 4 months, sometimes 4 a day. And about half of those, when I walked in the room, the look on people's faces, I knew we weren't, even when we were done with the interview, it wasn't going to happen. And they all also said, it's kind of their excuse to get out of it, you need experience at an agency before you can work anywhere in entertainment. And I got that everywhere, but to this day now, working in the industry 4.5 years, a lot of people have started in entertainment outside of working at an agency. There were times when it was really frustrating getting turned down, when the person next to me probably had even less experience and maybe not even a college education, and they were getting calls back.
Today's going to be a great day,
Even after all the interviews and then being a temp for 7 months, it was a really tough battle. This isn't fair. In LA, I found that, I think over the years after living here for a while, people know that I'm heavily involved with a lot of things. They come to me for advice on things, and they realize that they have to warm up pretty quick or they're not going to get what they need, whether it comes to wanting to learn more about me or being different, or even just wanting to learn more about being an assistant since I've been one for so long. And a lot has to do with just focusing on what you want to focus on. One of the biggest things is, it's advice that I'd give to any other person, where it's if you set your mind to it, you work really hard towards it, anything's possible. Don't let someone tell you that it's not. The way Rotary had me play that at the beginning of their meeting, and it was just a way of introducing everyone, even with the visuals of my everyday life. I tell people, imagine living life on your knees. It's trying to adapt to the average height world, because the average height world is not going to adapt to me. Early on, my parents had a great way of raising me and having a sense of humor. I have an average height sister. Actually, most little people are born to average height parents. And they said, my dad said he wanted 2 kids, my mom wanted 1, so they settled at 1.5. And the whole method behind that was giving me thick skin so I'd be ready for the outside world. A lot of people have never seen a little person before they see me, and I hope as I live everyday life to set an example and just show people that we're just people. We're short, but we can do everything everyone else does. I do associate myself with the disability community because there is a group of people where we all go through similar situations. There are a lot of little people who refuse to say that they're disabled, but there's no other group for us to fit into, so why not advocate for a community that it's not that bad having a disability anyways. I think a lot of people put a negative stigma to disability, and it's just a different way of having to live your life because of certain circumstances that may or may not get in the way, but you have to decide whether those get in the way. And a lot of things I like to talk to older groups about. I do go into the schools and talk to kids about being careful about how you judge people and not making fun of people, and being very welcoming and warm to someone even if they look different,
And to adults, I like to say you need to watch your body language in all different environments because, as I had mentioned in the video, I'm not sure if people have heard it, but I went on 100 interviews when I got to California. A lot of those times I would walk in the room and people were showing me just by their body language that I wasn't getting the job. And it's clear that I had some type of qualification if I was able to get the interview at all of these places, but they judged me right by the moment I walked in the door rather than judging the capabilities. It's important for people to ask what accommodations people need rather than assume. Same with in everyday life when there are people who make assumptions and laugh and point and stare. I encourage people to go up and ask questions because I'd rather someone ask me a question, and I don't think any question's offensive because that's someone taking the courage to come and ask a question. A lot of people are afraid of that because they're afraid of being judged on what question they ask. But it's a lot more hurtful if someone comes up to me and says, you're a midget, what are you doing here? You don't belong here. And there's so many times where those comments come up and they're just not necessary, but it's a lot of people who it's lack of understanding or lack of knowledge. I grew up participating in sports. I was a part of the community in Weymouth and got to know everyone really well. I did youth soccer. I grew up sailing in Hull. Then I skied, and I was on the swim team in both growing up and then in high school. I was actually on the sailing team in college. I went to Providence College. I was a marketing major, and I thought that I wanted to go work in advertising, but it was the summer before my senior year in college, and I knew that was a summer that's really important where maybe you can get a job out of the internship that you have that year. And I saw a news article of the top 100 ad agencies in Boston. So I applied to all of them, and I ended up getting connected with one called Allied Advertising, and they're involved with being the intermediary between the movie companies and the general public. So what I would do is I would look for the target audience to go and fill those advanced screenings. So if it was a Penguin movie, we would look for kids in the area that their families would take them, and then hopefully if they see the movie, they would then go and recommend it to other people once it came out in the theaters. And through that, I got exposed to the whole entertainment experience, and it's exciting because it seems very glamorous. And when I was in that was in Boston the summer before my senior year, and then I went back to Providence and they needed someone to cover screenings. So I was at the mall sometimes, at the movie theater, which was on the top floor of the mall, and the parking garage is below the mall. There were people who would try to bring in their camera phones, and I would have to be the one who would tell them they can't come in the movie and they would need to go back downstairs because it's a liability if people try to record a movie, especially before it comes out. So it was fun to have that type of authority, and people relied on you to protect those properties. And I went on to getting an internship at NBC in Providence, and that was an interesting time because they were about to sell a bunch of the NBC stations because they wanted to focus more on Telemundo. So that was one of the stations they were selling. I'm not even sure who has purchased it since then. But it was a fun time to just be exposed to entertainment in this neck of the woods. And then a contact there had recommended me to be a stand-in for Peter Dinklage. They were filming the movie Underdog in Providence, and they wanted me to stand on the set while he was in his dressing room just waiting around because they don't usually have the actors and actresses on set until everything's set up properly, especially with kids who are in movies and TV shows. They only allow them to be on set for a certain amount of time, so a lot of little people end up going in and being on set, taking the place of the kids until it's actually time to film. So I had that opportunity, but they told me that it was 2 weeks that I had a conflict, which was finishing college, and that was really important to me. So I ended up finishing college, and I asked if I could be part of the whole casting process just to learn to see how it goes. And I was able to call up 300 extras a day and have them report to set, and it was a great way to be exposed exposed to entertainment in a different way. And then by the end of that, I felt that I was ready to go out to California and try it out. I had previously, it was after my freshman year in college, I finally got involved in the Little People organization because they had a conference in Danvers, and it allowed me to get exposed to the community that I never thought I wanted to be a part of. I was used to growing up being with all my average height peers and didn't think I needed to be in a separate group, but it really brought to my attention that there are people out there who have similar obstacles in everyday life, and I can relate to a lot of those people. So over the years while I was in college, I got to know a lot of people who lived in California, so that just happened to align with my passion for trying to work in the entertainment industry. After I finished the casting, I moved out to California, and I did have a job, but that fell through right when I got there, so it was one of those moments where I had to figure out what to do next really fast because I did a lot of work trying to get out there, and I didn't want to come back right away and say I tried it for a day. So I reached out to a lot of alumni from Providence. Fortunately, there were a lot of people who ended up out there who went to Providence College, and it's a great community of people that I was able to rely on just for networking purposes. But it was really just my dedication to the search, trying to find a job. As soon as I got out there, I just researched every company possible. I would drive around town trying to find where to apply, and I probably sent about 1,000 resumes out, and then that led to 400 interviews, sometimes 4 a day. And then I finally decided to start relying on some temporary placement agencies because those were at least able to, I could interview with them, and then maybe they could tell the companies where I was being considered for that I'm capable for the job, rather than just throwing out, she's a little person, you may think of her differently and not think she can do the job. They were able to vouch for me, and that ended up being the best way. And even coming back here, sometimes when I'm picking out different opportunities to do on the side of speaking, using a temporary agency is really helpful because they're going to vouch for you and they're going to help you out and look out for your best interests rather than someone judging you right on the spot. So I ended up working at the largest talent agency. I was a temp for 7 months, so it took them 7 months of really hard work after the 6 months of interviews to understand that I was capable for the job. There were a lot of cool opportunities that came out of that. I first started with a lady she actually was the founder of Latina magazine, so she's always been passionate about paving the way for the Latin American community because they have a lot of negative perceptions, especially in movies and TV shows where they'll just hire them as the pizza person or the plumber, just these low-end positions, and then they're not taken seriously. And the same thing with little people, we're not taken seriously in the media, and then that affects how people treat us in everyday life. And that was one of the things even early on when I was wanting to work in the entertainment industry. I thought about that and how I wanted to figure out how the industry works because it influences so many people and their decisions and how they treat people, where I could have an impact on that, especially early on. And since it took me a long time to break my foot in the door, I waited to talk about my opinions and what I was passionate about because I knew I needed to just prove myself as a professional rather than being part of the community that I was already obviously a part of. So I worked in entertainment marketing where we were in charge of matching brands like Coca-Cola with American Idol. Hasbro was a client and we created Transformers off of the toy property. eBay was a client and their whole concept was that they wanted to show people that it's exciting to win. Even though you're spending money bidding on these items on eBay, it's just bringing the excitement of winning the auction, no matter what type of auction it is. And then there was a movie like The Devil Wears Prada, where in the script it said, "Meet me at the Four Seasons." We had Starwood Hotels as a client, and we convinced them to change it to "Meet me at the St. Regis." And then they would do a trade-off where people who were in the movie were able to stay at the hotel. So it was a lot of ways to connect these brands to entertainment areas that they wanted to be affiliated with, rather than them having to reach out on their own and just send a cold email, which they may never get a response to, unless it's on someone's top of mind. We had one situation, Harley Davidson was a client, and we were looking for celebrities who rode motorcycles, and we were offering to give them a Harley Davidson motorcycle if they were willing to ride it. Well, we gave one to Shia LaBeouf, and he ended up giving it to his mom, so it defeated the whole purpose of giving him the motorcycle. So you do have to think about those risks that could happen, and you can't always guarantee that the brand will get what they want. After I did that for about 2.5 years, I worked in comedy touring, where we were responsible for booking comedians all across the country. And it was an interesting experience trying to live up to their needs or expected needs and negotiate what they thought they were worth versus what we thought they were worth. And that also gave me a lot of experience just understanding how deals and contracts go, which helps in the long run just to know. And I went out to probably 4 or 5 comedy shows a night sometimes, just seeking out talent, trying to gain an eye and see who's talented out there, and if they would get approval in auditions, and if they were worth recommending for different shows, which then led to working in casting at CBS, where I was responsible for overseeing the casting of all shows produced by CBS television studios. And a lot of them were the drama shows that are on CBS, because the network works with a lot of the comedies that Warner Brothers TV actually produces. It's very confusing because there's studios and then networks. So all the CBS studio TV shows didn't necessarily have to be on CBS network. Some could be on Showtime or CW or other areas. So it was an interesting way to learn that industry, but I got really tired of just how it works and how we weren't saving lives, but people were still very greedy and acted very entitled. And I was ready to come home and spend some time with family and try to be a part of changing perceptions by being myself and showing people that they need to treat people with respect and that people are capable of more than they even think they are. And I've really had a great time going into some of the schools, especially schools where there are young little people, because the parents will call me and say they're about to enter middle school, and the middle school is going to combine 4 different communities, so that means 3 of these communities have never seen a little person before. We're afraid of them being made fun of and all the things that could lead to them not having a great time in middle school. So I can go in and at least set the tone, and then the administration's able to encourage that tone for the rest of the year. And that's what I'm really passionate about, just setting an example for the next generation, because I was fortunate to be raised with a lot of will and independence, and I hope that everyone's able to have that. So I want to open it up to questions.
How did your mom and dad feel first time you went to California? My daughters went to California just after college as well,
So when I first went to California, my dad left a note behind after they had flown back to Boston, and he wrote on the note something like, "I always wanted you to have independence. I didn't know you'd have this much independence." And even when I was interviewing, I was nervous about coming home because I went out there in August, and the holidays were about December, and they wanted me to come home. And I was really nervous about taking that leap to coming home because I didn't want people to ask what I was doing, or at least have it be a sign of me giving up. So we had trouble trying to negotiate, like, whether it made sense to come home or not. And they said, "You can go back, don't worry, we'll let you go back. Just come home for Christmas and we'll be happy." So now I have started to build the speaking, and I've gone to a lot of schools and starting to go more places. But I also help small businesses with social media, because these are skills that I can apply to my personal brand, and I'm helping other people in the process. But I think I'm just really passionate about social media because I worked in the entertainment industry. I knew it had a wide reach, but this is something that can compare in a different way, but still spread those messages through the online influence.
I'm not sure if I can phrase this correctly, but there was more of a stereotype within the 60s and 70s around little people in the film industry. And so social consciousness was to not exploit. And as a result, there was less little people who were in films because of it. And it seems to have changed as of late.
It has, but they also have been using technology where they'll use an average height person and shrink them down to make them a little person. And that happened in the 2 Snow White movies. And it became a problem because they had little people in one of them and then other people, there were actually little people training these people just to make sure they were acting the right way. But it didn't make sense because they don't know what it's like to be a little person or live or act like one. So it has its pros and cons, and then reality has opened up a whole new avenue. So there are positive and negative images through reality, but at least it's brought more attention and exposure to the community and its existence.
Do you feel like that exploitation is there, or
I think it's more built awareness, but it's the exploitation is just the fact that people don't know how to use us, whether it's in movies or any part of societies, because they're just not used to it. It's fear of the unknown. So I think it has caused people to have fewer jobs. But I even had a friend who knew a friend who was a writer, and he was writing in the script something about a little person, but not in a tasteful way. And my friend, who knew me really well and cared about me a lot, said, why don't you try to find a different type of person to be in your script, because you're not portraying them in the right way. So if there were more people like that who were already conscious about it, I think there'd be more of it. But now I think since they don't know what to do, they do avoid it. There are very few roles.
I think Eric has a question.
No. Good one, though.
Thank you. If there are no other questions, John, Eric, would you thought I'm going to have you give a personal gift. We have some parting gifts for you. Nice Rotary pen that we have, and this light keeps going out too. It's not like an intermission light. And a 3-minute candle blast. Yeah, here, I'll take the light. And Fred's going to take a picture in a second. And we also have a certificate there.
Thank you.
And get John in there. Okay.
1, 2, 3. Hold it for one more.
One. 3 3/4. Sure. I think we got 2.
I just want to be able to put it up.
Okay, I can email this to you
Okay.
also, because I just started here.
Yeah.
I'll ship that off to you.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I know we're a few minutes early, but we're going to adjourn. We've got the Red Sox and the Bruins playing tonight, so keep happy members. Meeting's adjourned.